The starship Eos drifted silently through the endless expanse of space, its sleek silver hull glinting faintly under the light of a distant sun. Inside, Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, her sharp green eyes scanning the view screen as her crew worked tirelessly around her. They were deep in uncharted territory, exploring a nebula that shimmered like spilled paint across the void. It was beautiful but dangerous, a maze of swirling gases and unpredictable gravitational currents. "Captain," called Lieutenant Mira Solis from her station at the helm. "Sensors have picked up something unusual ahead." Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and caution. Ilara turned to face her. "Unusual how?" "It's not natural," Mira replied after a moment's hesitation. "It's moving, but it doesn't match any known asteroid or debris pattern. And it's emitting low-frequency pulses, almost like signals." Ilara's brow furrowed. This far out, finding anything artificial was rare. Could it be another human ship? No, their scans would have identified it immediately. Something else was out there. Something alien. "Bring us closer," she ordered, her tone calm but firm. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As the Eos approached, the object came into view. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It looked more like a living thing. Its surface rippled and shifted, glowing softly with hues of blue, purple, and gold. Tentacle-like appendages extended outward, pulsating rhythmically, as if breathing. The sight was mesmerizing, yet unsettling. "What is that?" whispered Ensign Theo Patel, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. He was new to deep space missions, and this was unlike anything he had ever seen. "I don't know," Ilara admitted, stepping closer to the view screen. "But whatever it is, it's alive." Suddenly, the alien vessel, or creature, reacted. The burst of light erupted from its center, bathing the bridge in dazzling colors. Then came sound, a symphony of clicks, whistles, and tones that seemed almost musical. The crew froze, unsure whether they were being welcomed or warned. "Dr. Lian Zhao," Ilara said sharply, turning to the linguist seated nearby. "Can you make sense of this?" Dr. Zhao adjusted his glasses, his fingers flying over his console as he analyzed the data. "It's some kind of communication," he said slowly, "but it's incredibly complex. I'll need time to decode it." Time was a luxury they might not have. The alien construct began drifting closer, its movements deliberate. Was it curious? Threatened? Impossible to tell. Ilara made a decision. If this truly was first contact, humanity had to respond peacefully. She stepped forward until she stood directly in front of the view screen, where the alien could presumably see her. Taking a deep breath, she did something instinctive, something universal among humans. She smiled. Her lips curved upward warmly, her expression open and inviting. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien reacted, but not in the way anyone expected. Its glowing patterns flickered erratically, and the melodic sounds turned harsh, almost discordant. One of its tendrils shot toward the Eos, stopping just short before retreating back into itself. And then, without warning, it vanished. The bridge fell silent, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. Ilara lowered her gaze, her smile fading. Had she done something wrong? Or was this simply the nature of first contact? Messy, confusing, and fraught with uncertainty. "We'll figure it out," she murmured, though whether she was speaking to herself or her crew, no one could say. "We always do." Far away, hidden within the depths of the nebula, the alien watched them leave. To it, the human captain's smile hadn't been an act of kindness. It was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Weeks passed after the encounter with the mysterious alien vessel, and life aboard the Eos settled into a familiar rhythm. The crew continued their mission of mapping the nebula, but whispers about the strange encounter lingered in every corner of the ship. Captain Ilara Voss spent hours reviewing sensor data, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. Why had her smile? A gesture meant to convey peace, caused such an intense reaction. She couldn't shake the feeling that they'd missed something crucial. Then, one day, everything changed. The communication panel on the bridge crackled to life unexpectedly. Lieutenant Mira Solis turned toward it, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Captain," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "we're receiving a distress signal from another human ship." Ilara straightened immediately. Distress signals were rare this far out. "Patch it through," she ordered. A garbled transmission filled the room. Static cut in and out, but fragments of words became clear. Attacked. Unknown hostiles. Retreat. Then silence. "Where's the signal coming from?" Ilara asked sharply. Mira studied her screen. "Sector Gamma 7. About 3 light-years away. It matches the trajectory of the last known location of the Pioneer, a research vessel assigned to study nearby star systems." Ilara clenched her jaw. The Pioneer wasn't supposed to be anywhere near their current position. Something didn't add up. "Set course for Gamma 7. Maximum speed." When the EOs arrived at the coordinates, the scene was grim. Debris floated silently in the vacuum of space, twisted metal, shattered glass, and remnants of what had once been a proud starship. Among the wreckage, the crew detected faint life signs. They quickly dispatched a shuttle to investigate. What they found chilled them to the bone. The survivors of the Pioneer huddled inside an escape pod, their faces pale and haunted. Their leader, Commander Hale, looked up as Ilara entered. His uniform was torn, his hands trembling as he clutched a data tablet. Without preamble, he thrust it toward her. "You need to see this." On the tablet was footage recorded during the attack. At first, it showed nothing unusual. The Pioneer scanning an area of space when suddenly, the same organic alien vessel appeared. Its glowing patterns pulsed rhythmically as it approached. But then came the moment that made Ilara's stomach drop. One of the crew members on the Pioneer, a young officer named Riley, had smiled at the alien ship during negotiations, just like Ilara had done. Moments later, the alien construct unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, crippling the Pioneer before vanishing without explanation. Commander Hale's voice broke the heavy silence. "They didn't even give us a chance to explain. One smile, and they attacked. We barely made it out alive." Ilara felt a knot tighten in her chest. Her instincts screamed that there was more to this than met the eye. Smiling was one of humanity's most universal gestures. It symbolized warmth, trust, goodwill. How could it provoke such violence? Back aboard the EOs, the crew gathered in the briefing room. Tension hung thick in the air as Ilara addressed them. "We don't know why the aliens reacted this way," she began, pacing slowly. "But we can't ignore the connection between our encounter and theirs. There's something about our behavior, or maybe our expressions, that they interpret as hostile." Dr. Lian Zhao, the linguist, spoke up hesitantly. "Could it be cultural? Maybe their concept of communication is completely different from ours. What if smiling means something else entirely to them?" "It's possible," Ilara admitted, "which is why we need answers. United Earth Command has ordered us to investigate further. Our next step is to find these aliens again and try to understand them." The room fell silent as the weight of the task sank in. Humanity's future interactions with this species depended on getting it right this time. Failure wasn't an option, not when lives were at stake. As the meeting ended, Ilara stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the aliens waited, and she knew deep down that unraveling this mystery would require more than logic or technology. It would demand empathy, patience, and perhaps a willingness to rethink everything she thought she knew about connection. The EOs sailed through the vastness of space, its engines humming softly as it followed the faint trail left behind by the alien vessel. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the swirling nebula ahead. The crew had traced the energy signatures emitted by the aliens to this location, a dense cluster of gas and light that shimmered like an otherworldly ocean. Deep within its heart lay something unusual, a massive structure, partially obscured by clouds of cosmic dust. "Captain," Lieutenant Mira Solis called out from her station, "we're detecting significant gravitational anomalies near the center of the nebula. Whatever's out there, it's huge." Ilara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Bring us closer. Let's see what we're dealing with." As the ship pushed deeper into the nebula, visibility grew poor. Streams of glowing particles swirled around them, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Finally, they emerged into a clearing, and there it was. The structure loomed before them, impossibly large and utterly alien. It looked less like a building and more like a living organism. Its surface pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, shifting colors in waves that seemed almost hypnotic. Towering spires twisted upward, resembling roots or tentacles frozen mid-motion. The entire construct radiated an aura of ancient mystery, as if it had existed long before humanity ever gazed at the stars. "What is this place?" whispered Ensign Theo Patel, his voice filled with awe. "No idea," Dr. Lian Zhao replied, leaning forward in his seat. His fingers danced over his console as he analyzed the readings. "But those energy signatures match the ones we detected from the alien vessel. This has to be their home, or at least one of their bases." Ilara studied the structure carefully. There were no visible weapons or defenses, but that didn't mean it was safe. Still, they couldn't turn back now. Humanity needed answers, and this might be their only chance to get them. "We'll dock and investigate," she decided firmly. "Prepare an away team. Dr. Zhao, you're coming with me. We'll also need Dr. Cal Armitage for any biological samples we collect. Everyone else stays on standby." Minutes later, the away team stepped onto the alien construct. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit interior bathed in soft, shifting lights. The walls themselves appeared alive, covered in intricate patterns that glowed faintly. Some sections resembled veins, pulsating rhythmically, while others formed symbols that changed shape as the team watched. This is incredible," Dr. Armitage murmured, running a scanner over the nearest wall. "It's not just architecture, it's biology. This whole thing is alive." Dr. Zhao moved closer to examine the symbols. "These could be some kind of language," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Look how they shift and rearrange. It's like they're trying to communicate." Ilara stepped forward cautiously, her hand resting on the hilt of her sidearm. She wasn't taking chances here. As she scanned the room, her gaze fell on something strange embedded in the wall, a pattern that looked vaguely familiar. Squinting, she realized it bore a crude resemblance to a human face. Smiling, her breath caught in her throat. Was this why the aliens reacted so strongly to smiles? Had they encountered humans before and learned to associate smiling with danger? Before she could dwell on it further, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The glowing patterns on the walls brightened, and a low hum filled the air. The structure was waking up. "Everyone, stay alert," Ilara ordered, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "We don't know what we're walking into, but we're about to find out." The team pressed onward, deeper into the alien labyrinth. Each step took them farther from the safety of the EOs, but none of them hesitated. They knew this mission carried risks, but it also held the promise of discovery. For better or worse, humanity's fate might depend on what they uncovered next. The deeper the away team ventured into the alien structure, the more surreal their surroundings became. The walls pulsed with rhythmic light, as if breathing in sync with some unseen heartbeat. Patterns of glowing symbols shifted constantly, forming intricate designs that seemed to ripple outward like waves on water. Dr. Lian Zhao was mesmerized, his eyes darting between his handheld scanner and the ever-changing glyphs. "This isn't just communication," he muttered, adjusting his glasses for what felt like the 100th time. "It's alive. These symbols aren't static. They're dynamic, responding to stimuli. They might even be part of a collective consciousness." Captain Ilara Voss glanced at him, her brow furrowed. You mean they're thinking? Like the whole structure is one big brain? Possibly, Zhao replied, his voice tinged with excitement. Or maybe it's more like a hive mind, a shared intelligence spread across this entire construct. Either way, we're dealing with something far beyond our understanding. Dr. Cale Armitage knelt beside a patch of the wall, running a sample collector over its surface. Tiny tendrils recoiled from his touch, retreating into the material before slowly re-emerging. He frowned, examining the readings on his device. This stuff isn't just biological, it's adaptive. It reacts to everything we do. If we're not careful, it might start seeing us as a threat. Ilara nodded grimly. She didn't need reminding how delicate their situation was. Every step forward carried the risk of triggering another hostile reaction. Still, they couldn't afford to leave without answers. As they moved through the labyrinthine corridors, the glowing symbols began to change subtly. Some formed shapes resembling human figures, crude and distorted, but unmistakable. Others mimicked gestures, including one that looked eerily similar to a smiling face. Ilara froze when she noticed it, her stomach tightening. "Zhao," she said quietly, pointing at the symbol. "What does this mean?" The linguist stepped closer, studying it intently. After a moment, he sighed. "I think I know why they reacted so badly to your smile, Captain. To them, it doesn't represent kindness or warmth. Based on these patterns, I believe they perceive smiles as aggressive signals, like baring teeth. In their culture, it could mean hostility or dominance." Ilara's heart sank. Her simple gesture of goodwill had been misinterpreted as a declaration of war. No wonder the aliens had attacked the Pioneer. Humanity's most universal expression of peace was, to them, an act of provocation. "We have to fix this," she said firmly, turning to face her team. "If we can figure out how to communicate properly, if we can show them we're not a threat, we might still salvage this." Zhao nodded, though doubt lingered in his expression. It won't be easy. Their language is tied directly to emotions, but not in the way we understand them. For them, emotions are physical phenomena, vibrations, frequencies, wavelengths. We'll need to translate our feelings into something they can comprehend. Armitage straightened, holding up his scanner. "And we'll need to move quickly. This place is reacting to our presence more strongly now. Look." He gestured to the walls, where the glowing patterns were growing brighter and faster, almost frantic. Ilara took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "All right, here's the plan. Zhao, focus on decoding their language. Find a way to bridge the gap. Armitage, keep analyzing the biological aspects of this structure, anything that might help us understand how they process information. And me." She gripped her sidearm tightly. "I'll make sure we don't get ourselves killed while you work." The team pressed onward, navigating the twisting corridors with renewed determination. Each step brought them closer to unraveling the mystery, but also deeper into the unknown. As the hum of the structure grew louder around them, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Whatever intelligence governed this place, it was aware of their presence, and it hadn't decided yet whether to welcome them or destroy them. For now, all they could do was hope their efforts would be enough to prove humanity's intentions. But time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. The away team pressed deeper into the alien construct, their footsteps echoing faintly against the pulsating walls. The air felt heavier now, charged with an energy that made the hairs on their necks stand on end. Captain Ilara Voss led the way, her hand resting firmly on her sidearm as she scanned the dimly lit corridors. Every turn revealed new wonders and new dangers. Dr. Lian Zhao paused beside a wall adorned with glowing symbols, his face illuminated by their shifting light. "These patterns, they're telling a story," he murmured, his voice filled with awe. "It's fragmented, but I can piece some of it together." Ilara turned to him. "What kind of story?" Zhao hesitated, his fingers tracing the glowing glyphs. "It's about their past. A golden age when they thrived among the stars. They mentioned something called the harmony, a state where they shared emotional frequencies with other species. It allowed them to connect, to coexist peacefully. Dr. Cale Armitage stepped closer, his scanner beeping softly. So they weren't always alone. What happened? Zhao shook his head, frustration creeping into his tone. Something disrupted the harmony. A catastrophe, or maybe betrayal. The text becomes chaotic here. But there's one phrase repeated over and over. The smiling ones. Ilara's stomach tightened at the mention of those words. The smiling ones. You think that refers to humans? Possibly, Zhao admitted. Or maybe another species they encountered before us. Whoever they were, the aliens associate them with destruction. Look. He pointed to a series of symbols depicting humanoid figures surrounded by jagged lines, clearly meant to represent violence. One figure stood out prominently, its mouth stretched wide in what could only be interpreted as a grin. Armitage frowned, studying the images. If this is true, then our smiles might remind them of whoever caused their downfall. No wonder they reacted so aggressively. Ilara clenched her fists, guilt weighing heavily on her shoulders. Her attempt at peace had instead triggered centuries-old trauma. We need to show them we're not like the smiling ones, that humanity isn't here to harm them. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The glowing patterns on the walls flared brighter, casting sharp shadows across the corridor. A low, resonant hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. What's happening? Theo Patel asked nervously, gripping his scanner tightly. They're reacting to us, Armitage replied, his voice tense. Our presence is destabilizing the structure. We need to find answers fast, or we might not make it out alive. The team hurried forward, following the path illuminated by the glowing symbols. Eventually, they reached a massive chamber unlike anything they'd seen before. The room was lined with crystalline pods, each containing a dormant alien form suspended in a gel-like substance. Their translucent bodies shimmered faintly, veins of light running beneath their skin. Some pods flickered weakly, while others remained dark and lifeless. This must be their population, Zhao whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. But why are so many of them inactive? Armitage ran his scanner over the nearest pod, his expression grim. They're dying, or already dead. Whatever disrupted the harmony didn't just isolate them, it devastated their numbers. This civilization is on the brink of extinction. Ilara stared at the pods, her mind racing. If humanity could help revive these beings, perhaps they could rebuild trust between their species. But doing so would require risking everything, including their own lives. We've found our mission, she said finally, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We'll do whatever it takes to save them, and prove that not all smiling ones mean harm. As the hum around them grew louder, the team exchanged determined glances. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but failure wasn't an option. For the first time, they glimpsed hope amidst the ruins of misunderstanding, and resolved to seize it. The chamber filled with a tense silence as the away team absorbed the enormity of their discovery. The crystalline pods, each holding a dormant alien life form, pulsed faintly, their lights flickering like dying embers. Captain Ilara Voss stepped closer to one of the pods, her reflection distorted in its translucent surface. She could see the faint outline of an alien within, its delicate features and intricate patterns etched into its skin. These beings were fragile, yet undeniably beautiful. We can't just leave them like this, she said firmly, turning to face her team. If we can figure out how to revive them, maybe we can rebuild trust. Show them that humanity isn't their enemy. Dr. Cale Armitage nodded, though his expression was grim. It's possible, but risky. This structure is alive. It responds to everything we do. If we try to interfere with these pods, it might see us as a threat. Then we'll have to be careful, Ilara replied, her voice unwavering. Zhao, any progress on deciphering their language? Can you find a way to tell them what we're trying to do? Zhao adjusted his glasses, scrolling through the data on his tablet. I've identified some recurring symbols tied to concepts like healing and revival. But translating our intentions accurately will take time. And even then, there's no guarantee they'll understand. Ilara clenched her jaw. Time wasn't something they had in abundance. The hum of the structure grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. It felt like the construct itself was watching, waiting to decide whether to accept or reject their presence. "What about technology?" she asked, glancing at Armitage. "Could we use our medical equipment to jumpstart their systems?" Armitage hesitated, running simulations on his scanner. "Maybe. Their biology is incredibly complex, but I think I can adapt our neural interfaces to sync with their frequencies. The problem is exposure. The core of this structure emits high levels of radiation. Anyone working directly with the pods would be putting themselves in serious danger." "I'll volunteer." Theo Patel spoke up suddenly, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "I'm not a doctor, but I can help monitor the process. If it means saving these people, I'm willing to take the risk." Ilara looked at him, pride mingling with concern. "You don't have to do this, Theo." "Yes, I do," he replied firmly. "We came here to make things right. Let me help." After a moment, Ilara nodded. "All right, but we stick together. No unnecessary risks." With the decision made, the team got to work. Armitage connected his modified neural interface to the nearest pod, carefully calibrating the device to match the alien's biological frequencies. Java monitored the glowing symbols on the walls, searching for any signs of hostility from the structure. Meanwhile, Ilara kept watch, her hand never straying far from her sidearm. As the interface activated, the pod began to glow brighter. The alien inside stirred faintly, its veins lighting up with renewed energy. For a moment, hope surged through the team. But then the entire chamber shuddered violently. "They're reacting," Zhao shouted, pointing to the walls. The glowing patterns had turned erratic, pulsing with harsh reds and blacks. The hum escalated into a deafening roar. "Keep going," Ilara ordered, raising her voice over the noise. "We're committed now." Armitage worked furiously, sweat beading on his forehead as he adjusted the settings. Finally, the pod stabilized, its light softening to a gentle blue. The alien opened its eyes, or what passed for eyes, and gazed at them with an expression that seemed almost curious. For the first time since entering the structure, the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. The glowing symbols shifted back to calming hues, and the hum softened to a soothing melody. "They're listening," Zhao whispered, relief breaking through his exhaustion. "They understand." Ilara exhaled slowly, allowing herself a small smile, not for the aliens, but for her team. They had taken a monumental step toward bridging the gap between species. But as she looked around the chamber, she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity still had much to prove, and much to learn. The aliens weren't ready to trust yet, but they were watching, and that was enough for now. As the first alien stirred within its pod, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Captain Ilara Voss and her team stood frozen, watching as the being slowly emerged from its suspended state. Its translucent skin shimmered faintly, veins of light pulsing beneath the surface like rivers of starlight. It moved cautiously, its long tendril-like limbs unfolding with deliberate care. When it finally turned its gaze toward the humans, there was no hostility, only a deep, piercing curiosity. "They're not attacking," Theo Patel whispered, his voice trembling with relief. "Does that mean we did it? Did we earn their trust?" "Not yet," Ilara replied softly, though her own tension eased slightly. "This is just the start. We've shown them we can help, but trust takes more than one act." Dr. Lian Zhou stepped forward carefully, holding up his tablet so the alien could see the glowing symbols displayed on its screen. He had programmed it to project patterns associated with concepts like peace and healing. The alien tilted its head, studying the tablet intently before reaching out a delicate tendril. As it touched the screen, the symbols flared brightly, sensing with the patterns on the walls around them. "They're communicating back," Joe said, excitement creeping into his tone. "They're acknowledging us." Ilara watched the exchange closely, noting how the alien's posture softened further. It didn't recoil or react defensively. It seemed genuinely interested in what the humans were trying to convey. For the first time since entering the structure, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of optimism. Dr. Cale Armitage remained focused on monitoring the pod systems, ensuring the aliens' revival process stayed stable. "We need to keep reviving the others," he said without looking up. "If we can bring more of them back, they might be able to communicate more clearly, and maybe even explain what happened to their civilization. But reviving the rest wouldn't be easy. Each pod required precise calibration, and prolonged exposure to the radiation emanating from the structure's core posed a growing risk. Already, Theo's hands trembled slightly from fatigue, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I'll stay behind," Armitage volunteered suddenly, his voice firm despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "I'm the only one who fully understands the interface. If anything goes wrong, I need to be here to fix it." Ilara hesitated, torn between gratitude and concern. "You'll be exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. Are you sure about this?" Armitage nodded, his expression resolute. "Someone has to do it. And if this helps humanity make peace with them, then it's worth it." With heavy hearts, the rest of the team agreed. They left Armitage in the chamber, surrounded by glowing pods and humming machinery, while they returned to the EOs to report their progress and gather additional supplies. Back aboard the ship, Ilara addressed her crew, her voice steady, but tinged with emotion. "What we've done today is historic. We've taken the first step toward bridging two species, separated by fear and misunderstanding. But our work isn't over. Dr. Armitage is risking everything to give us this chance. We owe it to him, and to humanity, to see this through." The crew listened in silence, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and determination. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time, they glimpsed a future where humanity wasn't alone in the universe, a future built on cooperation rather than conflict. Meanwhile, deep within the alien construct, Armitage worked tirelessly, his focus unwavering. As he activated another pod, the revived alien gazed at him with an expression that seemed almost grateful. In that moment, he realized something profound. These beings weren't monsters. They were survivors, clinging to hope amidst the ruins of their world. Hours turned into days as Dr. Cale Armitage worked tirelessly within the alien construct, reviving pod after pod. The chamber hummed with renewed energy, its walls glowing brighter with each successful activation. More aliens emerged from their suspended states, their movements slow but deliberate, their luminous bodies casting soft light across the room. They gathered in small clusters, communicating silently through pulses of color and vibration that resonated through the air. Armitage monitored the process closely, his scanner beeping steadily as he adjusted the neural interface for each new pod. His hands trembled now more than ever, not just from fatigue, but from the radiation exposure. He could feel it, a dull ache spreading through his bones, a heaviness in his chest. Yet he refused to stop. Every time an alien opened its eyes and gazed at him with curiosity instead of hostility, it fueled his resolve. "They're starting to trust us," he muttered to himself, watching as one of the revived beings reached out a tendril toward him. It didn't touch him directly but hovered nearby, pulsing gently in what seemed like gratitude. "This is worth it." Back aboard the EOS, Captain Ilara Voss and her team prepared for the next phase of their mission. Supplies were running low, and the crew had grown restless, knowing they were pushing the limits of safety. But there was no turning back now. Each day brought new breakthroughs, fragments of communication, shared gestures, and even tentative attempts at understanding emotions. The aliens' language remained complex, but Dr. Lian Zhao was making progress, decoding symbols tied to concepts like harmony and balance. "We're close," Zhao told Ilara during a briefing on the bridge. If we can establish a stable method of communication, we might finally learn why their civilization collapsed and how we can help them rebuild. Ilara nodded, though her thoughts kept drifting to Armitage. She hadn't heard from him in over 12 hours, and the silence weighed heavily on her. Finally, she made the decision to send a small team back to check on him. When Theopatl and two others entered the chamber, they found Armitage slumped against a console, pale and sweating profusely. Despite his weakened state, he managed a weak smile when he saw them. "I'm fine," he insisted hoarsely, waving off their concern. "Just need a break." "You're not fine," Theo replied firmly, helping him to his feet. "You've done enough. Let us take over." Reluctantly, Armitage allowed himself to be led away, leaving Theo and the others to continue the work. As they activated more pods, the revived aliens began interacting with one another, their movements growing more coordinated. Some approached the humans cautiously, their glowing patterns shifting in ways that seemed almost hopeful. Meanwhile, aboard the EOS, Ilara received a transmission from United Earth Command. The Council commended her efforts but warned of potential risks. If this goes wrong, humanity could face retaliation on a galactic scale. The message stated, "Proceed with caution." Ilara understood the stakes, but she also knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. Humanity had already caused so much harm through ignorance. It was time to make amends. By the end of the third day, nearly half the pods had been revived. The chamber buzzed with activity, the aliens moving with purpose. One of them approached Ilara and her team, extending a tendril toward her. For a moment, she hesitated, remembering the danger of misinterpretation. Then, guided by instinct, she extended her hand, not smiling, but keeping her expression calm and open. The alien paused, studying her carefully before pulsing softly. It wasn't aggression. It felt like acceptance. In that moment, Ilara realized something profound. Peace wasn't about grand gestures or perfect understanding. It was about vulnerability, patience, and the willingness to meet someone halfway, even if that someone came from a world unlike anything humanity had ever known. But as the team celebrated their progress, Armitage lay in the medical bay, his condition worsening. His sacrifice had given them a chance at coexistence, but at a cost no one could yet measure. The alien construct pulsed with life, its once dim corridors now alive with vibrant light and movement. The revived aliens moved gracefully through the chambers, their glowing forms casting intricate patterns on the walls. They communicated not with words but with shifting colors, rhythmic vibrations, and soft hums that resonated like a symphony. For the first time in centuries, the structure felt whole again, a living, breathing entity brought back from the brink of decay. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the center of the main chamber, surrounded by both her crew and dozens of aliens. Her heart raced as she watched them interact, their gestures tentative yet meaningful. Humanity's efforts to bridge the gap were paying off. Slowly, painstakingly, trust was beginning to form. Dr. Lian Zhao approached her, holding his tablet aloft. "We've made significant progress," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Their language is tied directly to emotions, expressed through frequencies and wavelengths. I've managed to create a rudimentary translator. It's crude, but it works." Ilara nodded, glancing at the device. "Can we use it to explain why we're here? Why humanity wants peace?" "Yes," Zhao replied, adjusting his glasses. "But it won't be easy. We'll need to project sincerity, not just words. Their perception of communication goes beyond logic. They feel intent." Ilara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. She stepped forward, positioning herself where the aliens could see her clearly. With Zhao's help, she activated the translator, allowing her thoughts and feelings to flow into the room. She focused on conveying empathy, regret, and hope, emotions raw and unfiltered. The aliens reacted immediately. Their glowing patterns shifted, pulsing in sync with her transmission. One of them moved closer, extending a tendril toward her. This time, when it touched her hand, there was no hesitation. It wasn't an act of aggression or fear. It was connection. "They understand," Zhao whispered, awe evident in his voice. "They know we're different from the smiling ones." As the realization sank in, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. The aliens began communicating among themselves, their lights flickering rapidly. Moments later, one of them approached Ilara, projecting a series of symbols onto the wall behind her. Zhao studied them intently before turning to the captain. "They're inviting us to join them," he said, his tone filled with wonder. "Not just here, but out there, in their efforts to rebuild their society. They see us as allies now." Ilara felt a surge of emotion. Relief, pride, and gratitude all rolled into one. "Tell them yes," she said firmly. "We'll help however we can." With that agreement, the aliens led the humans deeper into the construct, revealing hidden chambers filled with ancient knowledge and technology. These resources, long dormant, held the potential to revolutionize human civilization. In return, the crew shared medical advancements and engineering techniques capable of stabilizing the structure's core, ensuring its survival for generations to come. Back aboard the Eos, the mood was somber yet hopeful. Dr. Cale Armitage lay unconscious in the medical bay, his condition critical but stable. His sacrifice had paved the way for this alliance, and though he couldn't witness the outcome, his bravery would never be forgotten. Ilara visited him often, sitting quietly by his side. "You did it, Cale," she murmured during one such visit. "You gave us a chance to make things right. When you wake up, I'll tell you everything." As the ship prepared to depart, the aliens gathered outside the construct, their glowing forms creating a breathtaking display against the backdrop of the nebula. They extended tendrils skyward, pulsing in unison, a gesture of farewell and gratitude. Ilara gazed at them from the bridge, her expression thoughtful. Humanity had taken its first step toward true interstellar cooperation, proving that even the deepest divides could be bridged with patience and understanding. But she knew this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and uncertainty. Yet, for the first time, she believed humanity was ready to face them, not as conquerors, but as partners. The Eos turned toward Earth, carrying news of an alliance that would change the course of history. As the stars stretched into streaks of light, Ilara allowed herself a small smile, not for the aliens, but for the future they'd helped create together. The journey back to Earth was quiet, the kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed and all that remains is reflection. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of the Eos, staring out at the endless expanse of stars streaking past as the ship traveled at warp speed. Her mind replayed every moment of their encounter with the aliens, the fear, the misunderstandings, the sacrifices, and finally, the fragile but undeniable bond they had forged. Behind her, Lieutenant Mira Solis approached cautiously. "Captain," she said softly, "the crew wants to know when we'll reach Earth." Ilara turned, offering a small, reassuring smile. "2 more days," she replied. "But I think everyone knows what really matters isn't how quickly we get home. It's what we bring with us." Mira nodded, her gaze drifting toward the viewport. "Do you think they'll believe us? About the aliens, I mean. It's a lot to take in." "They'll have to," Ilara said firmly. "This alliance changes everything, not just for humanity, but for them too. We've been given a chance to rewrite history, to show the universe that we're capable of more than war and destruction." Her words carried weight, not just for Mira, but for herself. Ilara had spent years leading missions into the unknown, always driven by duty and curiosity. But this time felt different. This wasn't about exploration or conquest. It was about connection. And it came with lessons she knew humanity couldn't afford to forget. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Cale Armitage stirred awake, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. Theo Patel sat beside him, keeping vigil as he slowly opened his eyes. "Welcome back," Theo said with a grin. "You scared us there for a while." Armitage managed a faint smile, though speaking was still difficult. "Did we do it?" he rasped. "We did," Theo confirmed, his voice filled with pride. "Because of you. The aliens trust us now. They're rebuilding because of what you gave up." Armitage closed his eyes, relief washing over him. He didn't need medals or accolades. Knowing his sacrifice had mattered was enough. When the EOs finally arrived at Earth, the United Earth Council convened an emergency session to hear Ilara's report. She stood before them, flanked by her crew, and recounted their journey in detail. The cryptic warnings, the dying alien civilization, the breakthroughs in communication, and the alliance they had secured. When she finished, the room fell silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. "This is unprecedented," one council member said, breaking the silence. "If what you say is true, then humanity stands on the cusp of something extraordinary." "It is true," Ilara replied, her tone unwavering. "But let me be clear, this isn't just about opportunity. It's about responsibility. Those aliens trusted us because we proved ourselves worthy of that trust. If we betray it, we risk losing far more than an alliance. We risk losing who we are." Her words resonated deeply, sparking debates that would continue long after the meeting ended. But one thing was certain: humanity's future had changed forever. As the crew dispersed to reunite with loved ones, Ilara returned to the EOs. Alone on the bridge, she gazed at the stars once more. She thought about the aliens, their glowing forms etched into her memory like constellations. She thought about Armitage, Theo, Zhao, and the rest of her team, their courage, their resilience, their willingness to risk everything for peace. And she thought about smiles. Once a gesture so simple, now imbued with layers of meaning she never could have imagined. Humanity had learned that connection wasn't about universal symbols or grand gestures. It was about listening, understanding, and meeting others where they were. The universe was vast, full of wonders and dangers alike. But as Ilara watched the stars shimmer against the darkness, she felt a quiet certainty settle within her. Humanity wasn't ready for everything the cosmos might throw its way, but maybe, just maybe, it was ready to face it together.